The mind should be working for you. If it's not working for you, it's working against you.
I'm Tommy Costello, and welcome to the Costello Coaching Podcast. I've had the privilege of working with the top athletes across the country, helping them earn college scholarships and reach the pro level. Whether you're a coach, athlete, or parent, I'm confident you'll find value here. If you do, my only ask is if you share this with another parent, coach, or teammate. I hope you enjoy this podcast. Welcome back to the Costello Coaching Podcast. And I usually don't start with this, but I'm going to ask you to pull out a notebook. I've never actually said that on any of the episodes I've ever done. But this person that I have across from me is very special to me, first off, but he's going to offer you a ton of insights. This is someone who has been through the process himself, been incredibly self-reflective, and has gathered up so much information and is now sharing it and helping it with so many people around the world. So this is my good friend, Chris Thomas, that we're going to be talking with today. And in my coaching, there's certain mentors and certain people that show up in my coaching. And Chris is one of those coaches and mentors that shows up in my coaching. So I'm super excited to have this convo with you, Chris, and thanks for being here.
Yeah, man. What's up, T? Yeah, I'm super excited because we're on the same page, right? Like-minded. We all have different philosophies, in certain ways, but I think the most important elements of philosophy we share, which is why you can affect people the way you do, why I affect people the way that we do. So I'm super excited, man. We deal with youth every single day of our lives, and there is no better, genre to be working with because they're so impressionable and they have so many challenges, and we can create pathways for them that they can't create on their own. So I'm super pumped to be talking today, man. We're going to get deep into it.
Yeah. So Chris Thomas is an NFL veteran, retired from the NFL, went into the financial services, did extremely well. And as he was there, he was helping coach and mentor young athletes. And that was just a natural calling for him. And while Chris was doing this, he really realized that his true calling in life was to serve those people. Made a decision that I think 90% of males who have that calling want to answer, but don't. And he has gone all in on creating Fusion Odyssey, which is a program that helps all athletes from all sports. And the way I see it, get deep within themselves and figure out where they're at and how they want to show up in their sports, but more importantly in their life. So he's made an extremely positive impact on thousands of athletes, but also myself. When I was going through hard times as an athlete, Chris was someone who I really leaned on and looked for wisdom, looked for guidance. So he's going to share some really important information today on how, if you're struggling or if you're a parent mentoring a son or a daughter, what are some approaches and techniques that you could use to help them kind of figure out how to navigate what they're going through. So Chris, where I want to start it right now is you see anywhere from a 10-year-old to big leaguers, NFL Pro Bowlers, you name it, all PGA Tour, and you've helped everyone in between. Do you feel like there are similarities between a 10-year-old and a big leaguer? And if there are similarities, what would you say they are?
So 100%. Yeah. The similarities are the emotional distress that an athlete feels, right? And their ability or inability to perform, right? And it doesn't matter. I say this all the time. Like, the one thing about toxic thinking and about emotional distress is it does not discriminate, right? It doesn't care if you're 10. It doesn't care if you're a pro. It does not care. The second a negative thought enters your head, it grows roots, right? And so I would tell you that if anything, which I think is ironic because we think the more success I have, then the less those emotional thoughts infiltrate my mind, the negative thinking, the I might not be enough, the pressure, the fear, right? The judgment, the perfectionism. But oftentimes it's just the opposite, right? Because the higher up you go, you know that the greater the expectation becomes. And it's such an easy distraction, right? To be like, well, now people expect me to be this, where before I wasn't even thinking about that. I just was playing. But now I'm very aware that you expect me to be this. Brock Purdy may be the greatest example, right? Guy, was the last pick of the draft in the 7th round for the NFL, got a chance to perform. He's performed well ever since he got the chance, 3 years ago? and just earned himself a hefty contract. I forget what it was, but $265 million. I forget how many years. I think five for $265 million and 181 or something like that guaranteed. And then you read the article and the writer says exactly what they say and exactly why people feel pressure. He goes, well, now he's really got to prove that he's worth the 265. Now he's really got to prove that he can take this team to another level. It's like, well, wait, what does he have to prove? Like, he's performing at the highest possible level that he can, which is why they just rewarded him with a $265 million contract. What do you think he needs to be now? I don't understand. Right. And so think about it, like, this is the perception of the outside world on you. Well, they just paid him. So like, he better be what? Like, what are you saying he better be? I don't understand. Why can't he just be exactly what he's been? Because that's been great, which is why you gave him that money. So I don't understand.
Do you think that's what happened to Brock Purdy this past season?
No, I think that Brock just, there was a lot of things that went wrong. You had Christian McCaffrey get hurt. You had Brandon Ayuk get hurt. Deebo Samuel's always hurt, right? You had other players get hurt around you. So there was a lot of weapons that he did not have. And it's tough, right? It's tough when you're losing some of your primary weapons on your offense. So they had a lot of things go wrong. I don't know that he was one of them necessarily, but could he have played better? Yeah, but it's hard to play great every single year in the NFL, right? That's why everybody's not a Hall of Famer, right? So it's a hard thing. But Brock Purdy has demonstrated his ability to play at a high enough level that he wins ball games and he can give them a chance every year to potentially make the Super Bowl. Why isn't that enough? And so as long as Brock Purdy can stay in his lane and not try to convince himself that now that he got that money needs to be more, then I expect Brock Purdy is going to be exactly who Brock Purdy is, right? Does that make sense? And so like the 10-year-old, he's not mature enough to feel like that kind of pressure, but he definitely is aware of when he or she is not performing well. And God forbid at that young age, someone say something to them at the wrong time, like they miss a shot and you come off the field and a parent goes, hey, you got to make that. Or a coach says, you got to make that. To a 10-year-old kid, you understand what you just did? Like, you just planted a seed in their head that now is convincing them that they're not allowed to miss. So think of where that's going to take them. This is where perfectionism comes from. This is where judgment comes from. Because the second you miss, now you're like, I'm bad. Right. And so it's crazy. So you can feel the same thing. They're just not mature enough at 10 years old to take it to the depth that someone who is mature enough can take it. And they're not aware of all the eyes on them that somebody might be who's a professional athlete or a college athlete.
Yeah. What's interesting about that and the way I think about it is Brock Purdy, that's like the pinnacle of pressure in sports. NFL quarterback, San Francisco 49ers. Like, that's the pinnacle of pressure. And I know you experienced the pinnacle of pressure. Then you take a 10-year-old kid, maybe we're posing this in AYSO soccer, the lowest pinnacle probably of pressure in sport. But I think what happens internally is the same sort of internal conflict. Like, we only have so much, no matter if our outside world is heightened, our inner world is going to experience the same sort of anxiety, fear, judgment. So just because someone is experiencing scrutiny or more eyeballs, it could feel the same exact way for that 10-year-old. And we don't ever think of it that way as people who are casting influence on others, but it is just as important. And when you say it plants that seed and people will live with that and walk around with that, that's real. And that is real. And so whether it's college athletics, high school, youth, whatever it is, like, those internal conflicts that people are going through are no less than the internal conflicts that the people at the highest level are going through. So we have to treat it the same and coach it in a similar way. Just because you're performing and you're getting paid more doesn't mean that your inner world isn't being affected the same way. You know what I mean?
100%. It's absolutely all relative, right? Because it feels the same way, to your point, internally, right? Like, it doesn't matter. It's just, we can go to a greater depth when we're mature enough to recognize greater consequences, right? And that's what most of us feel the higher up we go, is the consequence, the potential for consequence if we're not good, right? There's a lot more to lose than if you're playing AYSO soccer at age 10. But internally, the second you feel like you need to be perfect, then it doesn't matter if you're on a professional stage or if you're playing in a rec game in, Santa Monica, California, right? It doesn't matter. It's going to feel the same way. And I've consulted with athletes that are 10 years old, a ton of them, and you'd be shocked at what they feel at that age. It's truly like when I say it's an epidemic, that's not hyperbole. I'm not like trying to be dramatic. I'm telling you, emotional distress is absolutely an epidemic amongst young people. And most parents would never know it because your son or daughter at a young age does not know how to articulate the way that they feel in a way that they could even make you understand it. And likely you don't know what questions to ask to even get them to acknowledge that maybe this is why I'm feeling the way that I'm feeling. Where I come in is I ask the right questions, right? They fill out assessments for me when I'm consulting with them. So I ask a question or make a statement that makes them have to process, am I judgmental? And they're like, oh my gosh, yeah, I'm super judgmental. Like I do beat myself up when I make a mistake. Or, I do fear failing. And I didn't even know, like I really feared failing, but yeah, that's where it's coming from. And so then they identify that with a number, right? And the higher the number, the worse it is, generally speaking. But yeah, I mean, you see it with 10-year-olds or 9-year-olds and just the malfunction that takes place when they don't understand that it's okay to be imperfect, right? And that's the thing that you really want to teach somebody really quickly. And it's why you can, is that it's okay to be imperfect. Somewhere along the line at your very young age, like you've convinced yourself that you have to be perfect. And this is a problem, right? Because that's an unachievable, it's an unattainable goal, right? And the second you set that standard, you're done. Because then everything behind that becomes judgment, right? Because inevitably you're not going to have moments that work out exactly the way you want. And so every time that doesn't happen, you're going to tell yourself that you've been bad. And once you've told yourself you've been bad, that's you being judgmental. Well, then think about what's happening the next moment. The next moment, you're like, well, I got to be better. Or I got to be perfect. Well, again, do you have to be perfect? You don't have to be perfect, but you're telling yourself that. And so in that moment, think of the pressure that you're now creating to be perfect, right? So now you're going to create all this pressure around needing to be perfect. And that pressure in itself is going to disconnect you from you being fluid with the actions necessary for you to get the things that you want and execute on the level that you want. And so it's this horrible cycle. And once that doesn't happen again, meaning you being perfect, then that's where this fear comes in that, well, I'm never going to be what it is that I want to be, or I can't be what it is that I want to be. And that's where the fear comes in, because in your head, you're telling yourself that you're failing. So it's this horrible cycle that takes place. And once it starts, it's not ending. Like you need a new belief system and you need to identify like why what's happening is happening. Until you do that, you can't let it go. But yeah, I mean, it happens with 10-year-olds. It's horrible to see a 10-year-old go through that, because when I was 10, I didn't even know that you should even think about failing or being perfect or what a coach thought of you or what teammates thought of you. It didn't even cross my head. And honest to God, didn't cross my head until I was in the NFL. I never knew I should care what a coach thought or what a teammate thought or what a parent thought or like I needed to go be X. It's like, I didn't think about that. I just knew that every time I showed up that I expected to get what I wanted. Like, what does that even mean? You know what I mean? Like I couldn't identify. If you asked like, well, what does that mean, CT? I'd be like, I couldn't tell you. I just knew that I was going to produce something that looked great. And greatness is not like something that's in a cookie cutter. It happens in different ways, shapes, forms all the time, right? I could have 8 catches for 180 yards and 3 touchdowns, or I could have, 3 catches for 104 yards and 1 touchdown, and I could be equally as great, right? So like, what's so funny is we create these like benchmarks that you can't even identify like what they actually are or where they actually came from. But that becomes a benchmark on like what you're supposed to be. Like, I need to go be great today. What does that even mean? Can you tell me what that means? And most people couldn't tell you. That's a crazy thing. But then, then what are you striving for? You know what I mean? Like if you can't identify what you want to be, then why are you even striving to be that? Does that make sense?
Yeah. So there's a lot that brings up. First off, the first thing that I think about is, I think one of the coolest things that you taught me that completely reframed the way that I thought about pitching specifically, but it applies to all sports. It just depends on how you frame it. Was you shared with me one time when I was struggling with walks. I would get a lot of strikeouts, but I'd also walk people. And I remember my coach in college, like brutally criticized me in just no way, shape or form you should, and screamed at me and all these things. blame things on me. And I think through 5 innings, I had 10 strikeouts, no runs. And I walked the 9 hole, which was my 4th walk of the game. And they came out and pulled me, and we're winning 4-0. And they pulled me because I had walked 4 batters, but no one had reached third base. It was 4-0. And then the pitcher comes in behind me and gives up 5 runs, and we're losing 5-4. And I'm the one getting criticized in the dugout for walking 4 batters. And it put me down this like downward spiral. Like, I'll never forget this. And we were on a phone call and a conversation. You were like, Tommy, are strikeouts a stat that are counted in baseball? And I said, yeah. And you go, are walks a stat that are counted in baseball? I said, yeah. So you accept the strikeout count, but you can't accept the walk count? I said, well, I guess I'm just really frustrated with the walks because that's what I'm getting criticized for. But there's something that could happen, right? Yeah, CT, there's something that could happen. You go, okay. Then just accept the reality that a walk can happen, and that's okay, and accept the reality that a strikeout can happen, and that's okay. And then all of a sudden the fear of walks just went away, because it's like, yeah, that's a stat that everyone else is looking at. That's fine. It can happen, but it shouldn't affect the way that you play, because the second you start fearing walks, then your greatest asset, your strikeouts, probably go away, because all you're focused on is the walk. But once you accept the fact that as a quarterback, I can throw a touchdown and I can throw a pick, and truly accepting that, then you kind of unlock this idea that it's okay. And that was like a huge deal for me. And it seems so simple, but the most beautiful things are the simplest things. And that was like a huge thing that I reiterate to everyone I talk to about baseball. And then it gives them this sense of calm where it's like, oh, okay. Yeah, we don't want to stack walks. We would like to stack strikeouts 100%, but it's okay. Like, a walk happens. Like, we're going to chart it, and we're going to make it just as important as the strikeout. And that's okay. Both can happen. You're not going to get shamed or blamed if you walk someone, and you're not going to get paraded around if you strike someone out. It's just both can happen. And then, like, that was, in that kind of concept and that type of frame, was so fundamental as I transitioned, into coaching. So I thought that was like, that's always a CT thought. There's like 4 or 5 that are just like true to my core and my teaching, that being one of them.
Can I expand on that one?
Yeah,
real quick?
Go for it.
Because it's so important what you just said, right? One of the things that I tell people all the time, and I could talk an hour about it, because it's not just about sports, it's about life, but particularly in sports, right? Because there are so many voices around you that could become a distraction, right? For you to stay in your good space when you're attempting to do it, right? Especially at the beginning when you're learning like a new belief system, right? But the truth of the matter is like, acceptance is critical, because without acceptance, then we're always going to try to become something that is just a perception of somebody else, right? And like what I should be, regardless of it being a delusion or not, right? This perception that I'm not going to walk anybody. Like, really? Like, anyone who's coaching baseball as a pitching coach or a head coach has been around baseball enough to know that walks are going to happen. For you to not be able to separate, right, in context that the walks have done no damage whatsoever and pull me for that is ignorant, right? Completely ignorant. And so only when we are in a very strong mental space where we have ownership of our game and ownership of our belief system will we not allow that to be a distraction to us. So that when we go to the dugout, and although we didn't want to get pulled, they pull us, we're able to go to the dugout and be like, I slayed right now. Slayed. Despite the fact that the coach yanked me, and I know he yanked me because I walked. Well, is that a Tommy thing? Is that a Chris thing? Or is that a coach thing? 100% a coach thing. I only tell myself that if I'm in a strong mental space. I won't tell myself that if I'm not. Right? So then the coach becomes a distraction if I'm not in a strong mental space.
And I was in a weak mental state, and whatever the coach's thoughts were became mine.
That's exactly it. And so this is what happens. Truly, it's a distraction, right? And the reality is like, it's the world, right? The world is a distraction, whether it's social media or just people, for young people, and the cliques at school or whatever it is, right? The whole world can be a distraction to you, which is why it's so important for us to be learning how to create the right emotional, spiritual balance in our lives so that we can take ownership of the life that we're living and we get to function in our world on our terms, right? It's the thing that I realized the most in the NFL when I was broken and I went into the absolute abyss. Like, really what happened, and I mean, the turnaround was like really fast in the greater scheme of things. Like, it did not feel like that. And I can certainly go into it, but it didn't feel like that. It felt like it took forever, because when you're at the depth of crises, every second feels like a day. I mean, it felt like a freaking day. Just recalling it, I can just like feel those emotions all over again, man. And like what I was dealing with. And it was horrible, right? Because there are certain things that you expect. When I was attempting to make my first NFL team, I was one of 16 wide receivers fighting for 5 spots. They gave me number 47, which is not a receiver number. I'm a wide receiver. And everybody else had a wide receiver number. I was coming off missing my senior season from a Division II school, still not fully recovered from my injury, not at all to the strength that I had prior to my injury. And I'm showing up just vulnerable. You know what I mean? Because I really didn't know what I was up against. And then on top of already being vulnerable, they give you a number. You're like, ooh, that's not good. And then you walk in and in 5 practices in 3 days, you get 2 reps of anything and feel like number 47, right? Like you fit the narrative of a guy who'd be wearing 47 as a wide receiver. You know what I'm saying?
I'm going to pause you right there. Yeah. I think there's something so important there. So when nothing seems like it's set up for you, for example, and it's weird. Like, say you get number 81 and say, your first day at practice, you get 20 reps. You're still the same T as a CT as the guy wearing 47 with 2 reps. Like, you're still the same exact player. Mentally, though, you get 20 balls, you get a cool number on the first day. You completely realign who you are based off 47 and 2 balls. When guys are going through struggles, and I hear this all the time when guys call back from the minor leagues or whatever's going on. Oh, man, like, yeah, I'm over 20, and now I'm in the 8 hole every game, and, coach doesn't look at me. He doesn't pat my butt anymore. My teammates aren't really talking to me that much. How much of that is like made up internal dialogue, or how much of that is real? And you're very self-reflective. Now you're on the other side of it. You went through this process, and we can go into way more depth about it because there's endless stories of your NFL career. But if you're looking back at that young CT who knew no different, like knew nothing and was learning it all so raw in that moment in the NFL, never thought of judgment ever before 10, 15, 20, whatever. You're 22, 23, and all of a sudden you're starting to feel judgment. Do you think it was real? And I know it was real that they criticized you, but do you think you made up thoughts like, oh, shoot, I'm wearing 47. Oh, shoot, I'm only getting 2 balls. Do you think that compounded negative for you?
So what's funny is I was 21. Yeah, I was 21. And to be honest, I wasn't really judgmental. It was, I became very aware of my reality. So I wouldn't say I was judgmental. I would say that when I went out to practice, like, although when I went in my receiver room and I saw that no other receiver had a number like mine, I was very aware that probably wasn't a good thing.
Got it.
You know what I mean?
So you didn't have any preconceived notion. You were just like, oh, that doesn't make sense.
No, because like when you sign your contract, you're like, dude, I'm a Charger. Like, this is crazy. Like the dream after everything that I'd gone through, like nothing went right, right? Nothing went right. At every turn, there was a checkpoint that was only there to test my resiliency, my fortitude to be able to continue moving forward towards something that I really wanted, right? And at every checkpoint, I was on the verge of making a decision that was going to prevent that from happening. And the only reason I tell stories a day is because I decided to continue moving forward, even when it made no sense to do so. Right. And that's the fascinating part. Right. And I'm going to start sharing that story, right, on YouTube and everything else. But because it's poignant, right? Like there's nothing in my life that everybody in this world hasn't experienced on some level. There's nothing in my life that every athlete isn't going through right now on some level. Right. But yeah, so I didn't really think anything of it, because when you sign the contract, you're like, dude, I'm a Charger. But then you get there and then you realize, okay, I'm a Charger, but am I a Charger? And I'm going to figure this out real quick in the first camp that we have. And it wasn't until we went out to practice where I was literally the low man on the totem pole, getting no reps, standing in the back of the line, watching everybody else play, where you're like, Well, that's not a good thing for the first practice. Then it happens again for the second practice. Well, that's not a good thing for the second practice. And then you start the third practice, and then you get one rep against their starting corner who jams you out of bounds, and you haven't gone against anybody in 7 months. And the first guy you're going against is an NFL guy. You know that rep's not good. And then they don't give you another one for another day. And then you get another one in 7-on-7, and you get blasted by Junior Seau catching a 12-yard curl. And, you're just, the camp is over. You're like, so there's no way I'm making this team. There's no way. And that was just my reality. I wouldn't say I was judgmental. I just was realistic about the fact that now I understand. Like, until I got there, I didn't understand how it worked. But now I understand after 3 days that there's a pecking order. And I'm at the absolute bottom of that pecking order, and they're not even giving me a look, right? And so that was my reality. And I think what's different, right, between me and most people is I don't know that I created any insecurities around that. What I did was I went back up to school and said, you're probably not getting invited back to camp number 2. You need to go be somebody, though, that you haven't been yet. Like, you need to get some DBs to work against. You need to get yourself stronger and in better mental shape. So that's what I did. And then they never called to say, don't come back. So I came back, and then they basically had cut 3 guys. I just wasn't one of them. So because they cut 3 guys, and it was like a 2-week camp now instead of a 3-day camp, I got more reps. And with those reps, I was better prepared, right, to succeed in those moments. And so I did more with those reps, and I had some success. And all I needed to have, and this is very important, right? All I needed to have was one moment of success, one moment where I was like, okay, I know I belong here. I can do this. And this is why you feed people, man. This is why you don't allow people to tell you what they can and can't do. I never ask anyone to do the things that I ask them to do when I'm working with athletes. I'm not here to ask you. I'm here to guide you. This isn't about what you can't do. It's about what you'll allow yourself to do. And I know that there are no barriers between you and what you can do until you tell yourself that there are. So I'm not asking you to try anything. I'm asking you to let yourself do exactly where I'm asking you to go. And you're doing it at some point, I promise you. That's inevitable. So I want you to stop getting in your own way. That's what I need to teach you. Stop questioning what you are and stop doubting that you can do the things that you really want to do, because that's why you're saying I'm going to try instead of letting yourself do it, right? And so like that's really what you're teaching someone. And the reason you go there is because you know that once they taste that success, it creates an appetite, right? I want it more, and I want it again because that felt amazing, and I want to do that again. Well, the more that they have the appetite, the more they assert themselves, and the more they assert themselves, the more fearless they become. And the more fearless you become, the less fear you ever play with, the less pressure you feel. So it just starts like a different pathway, right? It's so powerful. You see it in a day. This is why like I can change somebody in a day. You see it in a day. And so for me, like when I got that taste, I was like, oh, I could do this. And then I went home for about 2 months right after that camp. And I pretty much did what people won't do. You and I talked about it with a pitching coach, right? And what we had to accept, or what you had to accept, is like, I don't control this guy. And whether he wants to be a delusional or not, I will not let that infiltrate what I know is my reality. My reality is I'm walking, guys. It's inevitable. I'm an imperfect person playing an imperfect game. So whether he accepts that or not, I do. And because I do, I'm going to go out and pitch exactly the way I'm capable of pitching every single time, right? So what we have to understand is that the world around you is going to be delusional. They're going to try to feed you nonsense and lies that will inhibit your ability to go perform the way you want or live the way you want, right? That's your truth. And so for me, I went home and I accepted my reality. My reality was, dude, you're going to get 1 rep every training camp practice. 1 rep. That's your reality. What are you going to do with it? You could go home and complain about it and say, they're not giving me a fair shot. They don't care. They couldn't care less. They've already counted you out. You know what I mean? So they don't care if you go home and do that. You're doing them a favor. You're making their job easy. You might get cut before training camp even ends. You do that. But I went home and was like, dude, you're going to get 1 rep. You're number 47. If you're number 47, you can't do what everybody else is doing. You got to do more than what everybody else is doing. So you got to challenge your threshold in ways that no one's even considering right now. And that's what I did. I went home and was like, dude, you need to get ready for 1 rep to show them why they need to see you again. And that's really powerful, because when I initially started down that path, it was all to show them why they needed to see Chris Thomas for rep number 2 in a practice. But as I started working out, I was so focused on just turning myself into somebody I had not been that I didn't have time to like think about anything else. I'm like, dude, you only got 2 months. Like, you don't have time to like get distracted. Like, every day is a grind. You're doing 3 workouts a day, and everything you were doing, and one-on-ones against an NFL DB and catching with an NFL quarterback 5 days a week, and then lifting and running and all the other stuff. You don't have time to take it in. But then one day, 3 days before camp, I wake up, I go in the bathroom, I stretch out, I look in the mirror, and for the first time in 2 months, I took myself in. And I discovered somebody I'd never even seen, right? And that was an epiphany, a revelation that was life-changing, because up until that point, nothing in my life challenged me to have to discover the depths of who I was capable of becoming. But this was one of those moments that challenged me. And we get like intimidated by these confrontations, these challenges that are in front of us. And we want to convince ourselves that everything we are contested with is bigger than us. But why? Life's about finding victory. So if the objective is to find victory, why are you trying to convince yourself you're going to lose? Like, how are you going to win like that? You know what I'm saying? And so for me, it's like, I was looking at myself going, dude, like, I'm so ready for anything they put in front of me. Like, I get it right now. This isn't about like trying to make an NFL team. This is about discovering like who I was meant to become. And I'm seeing this guy right now, and I love that guy. Like, I fell in love with that guy, right? Eye to eye, fell in love with that guy. I can't even explain the feeling that I had in that time, but I can see it right now, years later. And in that moment, everything changed. Because in our world, like, because I knew that people who knew me, like, knew that I was signed with an NFL team, I knew that if I didn't make it, everyone around me is going to think that Chris Thomas is a failure, right? It's so crazy the way that we think. All these people who are completely irrelevant, you know what I mean? Like, they can't be me. They're not me. They're not achieving what I'm achieving. Yet I'm going to let them dictate how I'm going to feel about myself because their perception is I'm a failure when they don't know anything about my journey, right? And in that moment, I was like, dude, I'm one of 1,700 guys on the planet signed on an NFL team. And I'm going to tell myself I'm a failure. I missed my senior season at a D2 school coming from a junior college where I played 1 year at a 4-year school that put me on the NFL map. 1 year. And I'm going to tell myself I'm a failure? Like, what? And so once I created a new reality on like what success was and that I had already achieved it, it liberated me, right? And so I was like, so right. I'm like, dude, I don't need to show them anything. I'm so ready for the moment if they give it to me. But if they don't, it will change nothing about who I am and what I'm ready to tackle in this world. So like, it just made me so non-judgmental. It just created just a freedom, no pressure, no fear, no nothing, even though they chart everything you do when you go to practice. Just, I didn't care. I was like, they're going to give me my 1 rep. When they give it to me, I'm going to find the best guy I can go against, and I'm going to eat his lunch. And then they're going to like see it, and they're going to do whatever they want with that information. And that's pretty much what happened. So, you know, every day I got that, you know, one, or I guess every practice I got that 1 rep. And with that 1 rep, I did work. Why? Because I let myself do it. Right? I say let because that's what most people won't let themselves do. They won't let themselves do exactly what they prepared themselves to do, which is crazy because you tell me you want to be successful. So why are you fighting yourself for the success that you want? And that's rhetorical because I know why, because you don't know how the mind works. So unless you know how the mind works and you unlock it, the mind's going to be a barrier to you. It's not working for you. It's in the passenger seat with you. It should be in the driver's seat. It's in the passenger seat with you. Neither of you are controlling the steering wheel. You know what I mean? You just want to grab it when you're about ready to drive off the cliff. Well, it's too late by then. You know what I mean? The mind should be working for you. If it's not working for you, it's working against you.
Yeah, there's a beautiful question that just keeps coming up in my mind as you're talking about your process and your journey. And it makes me think of my 14-year-old baseball team. We, experienced a lot of growth over the last 6 months, like this group of 14-year-olds. And I think 14-year-olds are so unique because like anyone who's a young male, but specifically 13, 14, 15, there's so much change happening. And as much change as there's happening in the body, and you look at a kid and 6 months later, they're completely different. There's a way higher amount of change happening in their brain too at that time. They're going through so much change. And so the biggest thing that I wanted to frame for them this season was what does it mean to win? Like, what does it mean to win? And posing that question, what does it mean to win? And these are kids that have either come from teams that maybe on the surface level, what does it mean to win? Like, well, you score more runs than the other team, or you score more touchdowns, or you score more goals, or you make more shots, whatever. No, like, I get that. We all get that. Like, you could be 4 years old and get that. But like, what does it mean to win? And so it's interesting when people hear like this podcast, for example, and they listen to a guy like you, and they listen to a guy like me. I think on the surface level, a lot of times people have this perception that, oh, these guys aren't that hard on people because they're just super positive and they're just going to encourage the positivity and they're going to kind of blow these guys up and make them feel really inflated and make them feel good. And it's like, no, like we're not shaming or blaming anyone. We're not putting anyone down, but there's no one harder on these guys than me and you. And I know that for a fact, but it's the way in which you're hard on them is everything, because you want to hold people to the highest standards, but what are those standards you're holding people to is the biggest challenge. And when you're put in a position as a coach, you're taking on more than coaching. You're taking on a role of mentorship and life, helping someone direct their life, almost like Google Maps getting you to the place you want to get. Like you're that voice in the car saying, turn right, turn left, turn right, turn left. And if you don't notify them early enough, or if you tell them too late, they might get in a car accident or they might not be in the right place at the right time. And so for us, like the way I listen to you is like, every time I hear your story and everything that you went through and everything that I went through, and what happens is like, we're just super self-aware on what those people are in most need of and those people that we're coaching. And so I always say a quick prayer before I ever work with anyone. I always just simply ask this question: what is this human most in need of? Always. And I go through that process 10, 15 times a day. What is this person in most need of? Sometimes they're in the most need of a little bit of an ass kicking and kind of, challenge. Sometimes they're in need of a hug. Sometimes they're in need of, but if you never ask yourself that question, then you're never going to deliver at the way in which you want to deliver. And so fast forward to, we had our last tournament, the last time I will be coaching a travel ball team. And I sat in the grass and I took them 100 yards away from the field. So it was just us and we were just sitting there and it was super authentic. And I just looked at the boys and I said, I've never vocalized this to you, but my biggest goal in teaching you and observing you over the past 6 months is to teach you what it means to win. And so these little things that I've taught you about the game and how you can strategize within the game, yes, those can help you win there. But what it really means to win is how you're going about your process on a daily basis. And most importantly, how you're thinking about your process. And if you can stay in that process and over and over and over again, no matter what's happening in the outer world, that's winning. That's how you will win. And holding those guys to the highest standard to stay with those processes is the biggest thing. And that's where most people lose it, because most coaches, the second it goes wrong, they'll hold you accountable for something that you're not in control of. And then you feel out of control and then you get away from your process, and that's the biggest thing that we filter for these guys is that, all right, we get that these things are happening. X, Y, and Z are happening, but what can we do right now that has nothing to do with these three things in this outer world that going to keep you on your path, like the Google Maps example? Okay. Then we go from there and we stay with that. And that's the biggest difference, because most people get criticized and shamed and blamed for things that they don't have complete control over. Whereas if you're self-reflective and you go, okay, I have control of this one rep. Like I'm going to get one rep this week. Okay. And I'm going to slay that rep. There should be no added pressure other than the fact that that's your rep, and you accept that that's your rep, and I'm going to do the best I can with that rep. And I scored a touchdown on that rep. Great. I dropped the ball on that rep. Okay. That's the reality. Now, what do I got to do today in order to prepare for my next rep and then go at it? And that's what you taught yourself. No one taught you that.
Yeah. No one taught me how to create the guidelines by which I was going to function. Right. And it, that became a lot more, that became a lot bigger and more profound later when I went through what I went through with the Niners. But in that moment, it was huge, right? Because I wasn't interested in being judgmental, and I fully expected I was going to get what I want. So that's the other thing. When people perform with so much fear, which is what you and I do not promote, right? I never want to promote someone being fearful of their greatness, right? Like I'm trying to give you a pathway of freedom so you can experience your greatness. Because I know once you experience it once, you're going to want to experience it again, and then again, and then again, and then again. And you're going to start connecting the dots as to why. Why? Because you're uninhibited. Why? Because there are no barriers between you and who you're capable of becoming, right? Why? Because you've let go of the idea of being perfect and being judgmental. And do we want to have perfect moments? Yeah, and you will inevitably, because you're not telling yourself that you have to be that, right? You're just capable of being that in any given moment, right? That's a fascinating part, right? There's not one moment I never expect to not get what I want, but I also have the reality of there's a chance I might not get what I want, right? But there's no reason to think that this is the moment that I won't get what I want. You know what I mean? So it's a very fascinating thing. But for me, it was basically me just saying, like, I'm not here to prove anything anymore. I don't need you to validate me for what I am. I'm going to give you information. You get to decide what you do with it. It's no different than me as a person in life, right? CT is not a coincidence. Like when I wake up in the morning and who you've met long ago, who people meet every day, I'm not a coincidence. Is you didn't catch me on just a good day or a bad day or whatever. Like I'm intentional, right? Like the person I am is someone I cared about defining long ago. All my flaws, all my shortcomings, I'm imperfect and I accept that. But every day I try to be a better version of myself, right? But at the end of the day, like most of what I am is steady and is repeatable every single day, right? And I love that because I know that I'm good for the universe. And I'm going to give you information about who I am. You get to decide what you do with that. And whether you accept Chris Thomas or you don't accept Chris Thomas, it won't put a dent into who I am or a chink in my armor or make me question who I am because I know what I am. And I'm smart enough to know what ethics are and values are and principles are. And I'm faith-based. So, you know, I have God as my foundation. So it's like, I'm very aware of that. So I know that everything I intend to be is really good for nurturing the soil upon which we live. And I also know the asset I am as an athlete. So like when I was there, I'm like, I'm going to go give you exactly what I am. You'll have the information. You'll decide what you do with that. But I'm not going to let that define who I am, right? I won't ever let you define who I am. That gives you power you shouldn't have over me, right? And so again, there's a freedom in that. When I don't need to be in the cool clique or need you to like my whatever, you know, on social media, when I don't need you to do that, I am so free. So I'm just doing it because I want to give you something that hopefully is good for you and good for your life. You know what I mean? Like, and you can take it, leave it, whatever. I don't care. Like at the end of the day, like I've had enough life experience that there's something I think I can offer you that, you know, can serve as inspiration, motivation, elevation, levitation, right? When like you're at the highest level looking down at the rest of the universe and your lens that you look through life from is so different than everybody else. That's when like, you know, you've arrived. You know what I mean? That's when you're a giver. Right? That's when you fall in love with yourself so deeply that you're like, I'm not trying to consume anymore. There's no reason to envy, be jealous, like wish I could be more. Like I'm everything it is that I want to be. And now I get to give something to you. Right? Until you've reached that point, you're always going to be compromised. Right? It's why you and I, it's why we promote freedom and why we demand, you know, like, hey, I want you to be the greatest version of yourself. So I'm going to demand that out of you. But what does that mean? That I beat you down? That I browbeat you because you made a mistake? Like, no, it's like the dumbest thing a coach could say is a wide receiver. And you hear it like a high school coach tells a kid who dropped a ball, come on, man, you got to catch that ball. Or give me somebody who wants to catch. Like, really? You thought the kid like didn't know the objective was to catch a ball? And how is you saying you got to catch that helping the kid do his job any better? Right? Like that's the most ignorant response that a coach could have. And it drives me freaking nuts because it's not just football. It happens everywhere. Right? When you say something so stupid.
Throw a strike.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Come on, dude, you got to throw a strike. It's like, you know what, timeout. Is that the objective here? Like, I didn't know that. Like, I didn't know that we were supposed to throw strikes. I thought I was supposed to throw balls. You know, it's like, it's such an ignorant thing to do, right? Like what you need to give people is, you know, the freedom to just go be imperfect. And in that, be able to connect with the things that they've worked on that give them the best chance to get what they want. You know what I mean? Like that's not complicated.
So another example from this weekend, and you're going to love this because it just happened authentically. So I think as I'm listening to you, like you found this groove within your playing career where you found some space to create freedom for yourself. And you're like, all right, I have nothing to prove. I'm going to be who I am. And I think over the last 5 years, my most authentic coaching and my greatest coaching has come from that. Like, obviously, whenever you start anything, there's always the intention of like an ego-driven thought, and not in a negative way. It just kind of is for competitors. All right, I'm going to prove it to these people that I'm worth it. And that's a early motivator, but it also is an inhibitor from true authenticity. And so the balance then becomes, look, I'm going to be incredibly intentional on what I'm doing and what I'm providing. And I'm going to work as hard as I can to make sure that what I'm providing is of the highest value. But at the end of the day, like, I'm just going to be present with that person that's in front of me and do what I feel is right and what is best in that situation. And that could be some smart thing I know, or some of the simplest things that most people know. I'm just going to be the vehicle in order to deliver that information. And that's where I have shifted within my coaching. I think my greatest growth as a coach and as a person leading a business and leading people all the time has been that just, I have nothing to prove here. I am who I am. I will help you and I will do my best. And if I can't help you, I'm going to find someone that can, and we'll just continue to grow together like that. And so it's been so freeing for me on the coaching side. Is like, it's made it so much better. And I know that happens the same way for players. Like when the players do that, that's when they start hitting 400, or they they start striking everyone out, and you get that acceptance for, I know my game's good enough. I'm just going to go do me. And so what's interesting was, like, coaches might be listening to this, because I get a lot of coaches that listen to this podcast, and coaches might be saying, okay, well, how do I do this? Like, I promise you, I'm trying to be positive. I'm trying to do the right thing, but like, that's the first thing you're trying. And then the second thing is, you need to, in your words, you need to let yourself first try, just allow yourself, let yourself. But an example of how I lived this out this past weekend was, we go play a team, and this team has no business being on the same field as us. Okay. And we have some dumb time limit on the game. And, there's no new inning after this time, or excuse me, there's no new inning after this time. And then there's drop dead at this time. And so our team goes out and walks the house, and I give the players freedom to walk guys and strike guys out. I don't criticize them for that. But, if they're putting their team in a negative position, they're going to get pulled out of the game. And I'll just say, hey, it's all right. Wasn't your day. Let's go. Next guy. And that's all it is. And so we're going through this thing, and we run these pitchers out who rarely ever walk guys. And in 4 innings, we walked 11 batters. Okay. Bad. And hit 1. So we had 12 free 90s there. And so this team that we're playing starts playing the antics and the BS of trying to run out the clock in baseball, which is so annoying, because it's not a game where you run the clock out. And they're doing all these things. And I gather the boys up, and I just say to them, I go, all right, this is what these guys are doing. We're 40 minutes away from this. I expect them to call timeout and tie their shoe 7 times before this game's over. Like, they're going to do all this BS, and, and so we got to overcome that. I'm just letting you know, this is what we're going to do. We're down 5 runs. We got to score 5 runs right now. If we score 6, we got to get out there and get 3 outs within 7 minutes. Like, that's what we got to do. So we get the score all the way back to a tie ball game, run the boys out there, and the umpire tries to call ball game. I go, no. Like, right away, I go, this is the time. This is the situation. He's like, oh, sorry. So then we go through the process. We're right there, 2 outs, double, walk off. And the boys like feel deflated. And so they did the wrong, they didn't do the right things and walking all the people and giving up all the runs, not showing up prepared, ready to win. But then they fought all the way back, and then they lost. And so it was like, you did all, you pushed, and then you still didn't get it. You made all the plays, and then you got cut from the team, or, these things happen. So I have the boys take a knee after the game, right? And in this situation, it would be a very easy situation to be like, you can't walk people. That's why you lost to a team that wasn't as good as you. Lay into them, make them run, do this, do that, whatever. And I just looked at them and I said, guys, some things happened today that went well, that I saw that went well, and some things went that we need to improve on. I just want to explain to you why you lost, but I want to also explain to you what you did well. And guys, we gave up 12 walks and hit batters. And that's just that pure fact alone. The fact that you're able to tie the game is pretty incredible. That's all that happened. You guys didn't make an error. You didn't do this wrong. You didn't do that wrong. You came up clutch and hit when you needed to hit. We scored when we needed to score. We did all the right things. It's really hard to overcome those types of shortcomings. And they're like, and so they're in that moment. And then I say, okay, guys, stand up. And so I had everyone stand up. And then I walked 180 degrees. And then I said, all right, take a knee. and they took a knee and they looked at me and I go, all right, time for the next game. So in this game, this will be our priority. This will be our focus. This is how we're going to go out and achieve it. This is how we're going to go win it. And they're like all locked in, bought in. And we go play a team that's better. We go 0 walks, 0 hit batters. We score 7 runs. We win 7-0. Same kids, same team, better competition, just slightly changed the framing and the mindset, completely different result. And that only can happen if you can accept both sides of it. And I accepted both sides of it. And that's why I thought it was my most pure coaching ever. They were in this moment. I had to physically change them, stand up, move around, change your sight, change your perspective, take a knee, and then help them change the perspective. Same kids, same dugout, better competition, completely different result. And that's like an example of how it can be done. You know what I mean? Identify, be real with them. Like, hey, you walked, there was 12 free ones. We lost. They weren't as good as you. You did this, but we lost. All right, this is how we're going to win. And so I was really proud of that coaching. But that's like an example of how you can help and mentor and cultivate the right thinking.
Oh, 100%. The reality is that there has to be, unfortunately, sometimes there is a expectation that because you want to create a specific positive outcome, that's enough. And the truth is it's not, right? Just because you want it doesn't mean anything. There has to be a driving force. There has to be an activation of something that leads you to creating a specific intention for what you plan on doing and being today, right? And that's the truth. That's where it all has to start, right? Like, what is your intention? You're here. What is your intention? Is it just to be here or to be great today, right? And what does great even mean? Like, I just want you to be fearless and attack the things that you want and understand what your objective is every time you go to execute an action, and just let yourself connect freely because there's no judgment here. You know what I mean? I want you to just go let yourself be the best version of you, right? That's it. And so a lot of times when you're young, you just think that because we practiced or because I want it to work out well today, it's going to. It's no, it's not how it works. You know what I mean? You are young and there's always a chance that your complacency is going to cost you the things that you want, right? And so without intention, you're always at risk of not getting what you want, right? And so, yeah, that's so powerful that you made them aware of that. And that truly, because of the disappointment, right, of 12 free bags, right? This team wasn't even close to being as good as us. They can feel that. So there's no reason to browbeat them. It's so what do you want to change, right? What do you want to change? Why do you think it happened? I'd like you guys to tell me, why do you think it happened? Anytime I go talk to teams and they're not having success, I'm let's not sugarcoat it. Tell me what you think is a problem. Don't worry about hurting anybody's feelings because anyone here is part of the problem. It's okay. We're trying to fix the problem. We're not trying to focus on it. We just need to identify it though. Because until we identify what the problem is, it's hard to move forward beyond it. You know what I mean? And so it's like me, I've coached only 4 or 5 times ever because I don't have the time. Right. And I like breaking people's games down into parts. You can't do that all the time when you're coaching. Right. And so the first time I ever coached was, U10 AYSO all-star soccer team that the next year went into AYSO's version of club. AYSO, for anyone who doesn't know, is rec soccer. But then the next year they created their version of club so they could try to keep kids in AYSO longer before actually going to club. So the second year they created their own league that would play other all-star teams, right? And not just the regular local, rec teams. And so we had played 70 games over 2 years. And when I first started working with these kids, I never once did anything except broke their game down into parts. And we'd work on very specific things with a very specific intention behind them. Every time. They were like games. For kids who were 10, they loved it. They fell in love with what the game was. It was no, we're not going to throw a dart to hit the dartboard. We're going to throw darts to hit the bullseye. So that becomes our game every time we touch a ball, every time we see a ball, every time we pass a ball, every time we kick a ball, receive a ball, whatever. That's our game. It's very specific. And they just started connecting to it. And then eventually you go into the first game and you're okay, well, we've been working on everything that we want to do out on the field. So just do what we've been doing in practice. And then they go do it they're machines, AI generated. You know what I mean? It's crazy to watch 10-year-olds do it. Over 70 games, we went 63-5-2. And we scored 321 goals, gave up 61 goals. Could have scored 370. We had to stop scoring on teams. Never once did I talk about winning. Not one single time, ever, because I already know that I gave them a pathway to be free playing. And they've already demonstrated that when they're free playing, they play outstanding and they're great together. And so if you just go be exactly who it is that you are, winning will be a byproduct of exactly what we do, right? I never have to talk about it. Only once did I get on them. To your point, like I'm demanding in the sense of I don't want you to be compromised, right? So you'll never be compromised because of me. I'm not going to create the fear. But if you go out there and give a half-hearted effort, I'm going to have something to say about that, right? And so we were losing to a team that we should have beat like easily, and we were losing 2-0 at halftime. Dude, I mean, I think we gave up 2 goals in a game one time. You know what I mean? Like, and so to be down 2-0 to a team that was so substandard was a joke. And so I got pissed at halftime. I was like, hey, listen, I don't care if we win or lose, but I'm watching guys jogging out there, complacent out there, not caring out there. If you don't want to play, go to the sideline. We'll only play with the kids that do, right? I don't care if we lose, but I care about effort, and you're giving none of it. And you can't accept that. The fact that you're accepting it is why I'm upset. You know what I mean? And I said, I don't care what we do the next half. You need to go out and play with some effort. Like you got pride in the fact that we don't lose. And I don't care if we lose, but we're not built to lose. You know what I mean? That's the truth. And if you don't have enough pride in that, then I want you to stay on the sideline. You know what I mean? There were 2 kids in particular that were like jogging around. Like if I see you jogging around again, you're sitting out the rest of the game, right? Like I don't care what happens. I don't want to see that again. And then the second half, they literally tried to sock everybody, the other team, down into their defensive side just so that we could not score. And we scored 5 goals. You know what I mean? And after the game, there was a great learning opportunity that yeah, we won, and that's fine. It's not about the win. It's about, I want you to be hungry for the win before it comes to the point where you're on the verge of not getting what you want. You know what I mean? I don't want that to come from me. I want it to come from you, right? That's a life thing. You're going to have to fight for the things that you want. And if someone wants what you want more than you, you're in trouble, and you can't be okay. That again is what I realized in my NFL career. I mean, that's why I leapfrogged all these guys in the NFL, when I literally was a low man on the totem pole, got my 1 rep every practice. And then eventually after 4 days of like doing something really good with your 1 rep, you start leapfrogging guys. Instead of Vincent Parker, you're like, Chris, come up here. Instead of this guy, it's Chris, come up here. Chris, come up here. And next, like you're number 8 on the list, and then you're number 7 on the list. And then 3 preseason games go by and there are only 6 wide receivers left standing because they had to cut from 90 to 65 guys, and you're one of them. You want a guy that they love. And that's the other thing. We get so sidetracked with like, well, this guy's doing this, or this guy had more success than me. It's like the greatest competitors never worry about what you're doing. They believe that they're so great that you can't rival or match what it is that they do out there, which is why they never get sidetracked by you ever. They're not competing against you. They're competing against themselves. You know what I mean? And that's what the greatest players do. That's why people are always like, man, how did you compete against those guys? And 15 whatever other guys. It's like, I didn't compete against 15 other guys. I competed against me. That's one of the strengths I realize I have. And that's something that so many young athletes have lost, right? Part of it's because our landscape for sports has completely changed, right? You have club travel sports starting at age 6, where these kids are getting exposed to the intensity of parents, the intensity of coaches at a way younger age, right? So they're getting exposed to the feelings of like pressure and judgment and fear and expectations way too young. And they're not mature enough to process that. They're being fed like lies without understanding it about what they have to be just by the fact that someone's making a statement or comment before, during, after a game. And that's becoming like this root, this seed in their head that's going to grow roots about, well, I can't make a mistake. I got to be perfect. I'm scared now to fail or screw up. And it's like, but what is failing? Like we use that word so much in our society, in our life. It's crazy. You would be shocked at how many athletes I've sat down with who, on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the worst, 1 being the least, me writing, I fear failing, it's 9 or 10 almost all the time. And it's crazy. The scary part is when you ask somebody what failing is, it's scary. Walking a batter, making an error, not getting a hit, dropping a ball, throwing a pick. You're like, what? That's failing? If that's failing, you're in trouble because that's built in. So the question becomes like, why haven't you accepted that? Where along the lines did you become so misled that you haven't accepted what your reality is, man? And this is why I say it takes courage to be an athlete, right? You're getting on a stage to be scrutinized by everybody around you. And if you are weak-minded, Their scrutiny, their judgment, their eyes are going to affect the way you perform. It's going to affect the way that you feel, right? And that's going to destroy you, because the second that happens, then you will never even go out to be great anymore. You're going to go out to try not to be bad, right? When you're worried about people's perception of you and that you're letting people down, or I'm letting coaches down, or I'm letting my teammates down because I'm not perfect. Like, imagine what you're going out to do then. You're not going out to be great. You're going out to try not to be bad. Right. And that's two completely different things. And every time you're not great in your eyes, you're failing, which is horrible. Right. Because in truth, you're not failing. Failure would be making no attempt to actually succeed. But, you know, for us as athletes, anytime we go out there, like, we all want to give ourselves a chance to, you know, succeed at the things that we're doing. Well, that action moving towards success in itself is success. Right. But we don't see it as that. Right. We see it as us failing if we don't get the exact end result that we want. And when in truth, you could not get the exact end result that you want, and you're not failing, you're just falling short. This is why we process information, right, from the things that we just experienced, so that we can learn and grow and become better in the next moment. But when you tell yourself that you're failing, then I know that you've been judgmental about that. And the second you've been judgmental about that, I know that you haven't accepted your imperfection. Well, how do I know that? Because if you had, you would know that those imperfect moments are built in. There'd be no greater waste of energy than turning around and judging that imperfect moment. You know what I mean? So this is why I know that you've told yourself you have to be perfect. You know, it's a horrible cycle. But when you get out there on a stage, man, you know, you're trying to do things. A lot of these athletes, not everyone has the aspirations to go play in college or go be a pro or whatever. But the truth is, there's a very, you know, small minority of athletes that get a chance to do that. You got to put yourself out there to be scrutinized, to be vulnerable. That's the hardest thing in life for people, is to be vulnerable, to be exposed. And you're asking athletes to do that 4 or 5 times a week, 2 times on a weekend, however many times you're practicing. A lot of athletes feel anxiety just going to practice, you know, so they're feeling that way just trying to get better. But then there's game days, you know, 2 times a week, 3 times a week, 1 time a week. You're out there on a stage for thousands of people, maybe to scrutinize you depending on where you're playing and what you're doing, right? And so I say you got to dare to be extraordinary, because it takes courage. You know, it's so easy to get distracted and be compromised, right? It takes like fortitude and resiliency, and you unlocking the mind, because the mind is so vast, right? It's psychological. How do I learn to play against me? It's intellectual. How do I learn to play this game within the game that makes what I do more consistent and accelerates what I do at a much higher level, right? Like, when you learn to play a game within the game, really what you're activating is hyper-focus, intention, connection. Those 3 things right there change everything you do. And then the emotional part. How do I learn to like eliminate all the toxic thoughts and feelings that I have that truly are the biggest barrier that affect all of us? I mean, John Ram just said it in golf. Like, anyone telling you they're not nervous, you know, going on the last day and you're fighting for, you know, your PGA championship, winning a major, they're lying. What we have to learn to do is fight the nerves, right? And this is, I say it all the time, man, and this is so important. One of the reasons why so many athletes are basically spinning their wheels and going around in circles is because they don't know how to confront toxic thoughts, right? Toxic thoughts are there and they try to navigate in spite of them. You can't, right? It's like putting a Band-Aid on a tumor. The tumor is there. It's not going away. And so when you're unwilling to get confrontational with negative thinking, it's going to affect the way that you perform, right? And that's what John Rahm is saying, you know, pro golfer who's made, you know, hundreds of millions of dollars now. It's like, he's telling you that I need to learn how, when I feel those feelings, to be confrontational so that I can talk them down, right? To pretend like they're not there is going to affect what happens next, you know, and that's where athletes really are experiencing crises, is they don't know how to do that. You know, they feel all that anxiety and all that pressure and all that fear. And it's like, okay, well, you're addressing it. I'm not. Well, good luck. You know what I mean? And this is why the mind is so important. You've worked with enough people. I've worked with enough people. You're a great example, because you did all the writing and studying on what to do mechanically when we sat down and talked when you were going through what you went through. And I'm like, we're gonna address it in a different way, right? Like, we're gonna unlock your mind. You've written everything down, and how's that working out? You're like, it's not. Okay, so we're not gonna go there anymore, right? Like, you know how to pitch. It's not about that. I don't want you to try to pitch anymore. We're gonna learn how to let ourselves pitch. Right. And so this is the thing, like, we got to get confrontational so that we let ourselves do the things that we know that we can do, so that we can be rational, not irrational in the moment that matters the most. You know what I mean? And if we can't do that, then the moment's going to be bigger than us, you know, and that's what's so fast. That's why I love our world. That's why I love the mind. I mean, I experienced it. I've been in the abyss. I've had full blown anxiety. This is why I'm going to share the things that, I'm now going to start talking about. I really haven't gone in depth about. I mean, everything that someone's dealt with, whether it's, you have these dreams about what you're going to do in a sport that you love, and you're a freaking freshman that's 5'5", $118, and the coach benches you halfway through the season because you dropped a punt. In today's day and age, most kids aren't resilient enough to keep moving ahead. They quit. You know what I mean? But then how do you win? And then you can go anywhere you want and, coming out of high school, but the coach badmouths you and says, you can't play Division I football. And so you end up going to junior college. But before that, you almost quit. Then you go to junior college and the coach lies to you about, we're going to pass 75% of the time if you come here as a wide receiver, and they pass 15% of the time. And almost, kills you on your, bid to try to get to a 4-year school to keep your dream alive to go play football, and then you go to college and you have one good year, and, that year puts you on the NFL map. It becomes a real dream. It becomes a reality, no longer a dream, that you could get the things that you want. And then the next year, 7 minutes into your third game, you suffer a season-ending injury. It's like, everything goes wrong, right? And then you get in the NFL and you overcome all these odds and you think, oh my gosh, I did it. And then you live the greatest dream you've ever had, playing on the best team in the NFL that just won a Super Bowl next to the greatest receiver ever, Jerry Rice. And then the coach becomes your biggest obstacle, and you allow that person to give you full-blown anxiety, right? Full-blown anxiety at a time where you didn't know how to get out of it. There was no book, to figure it out. And you were the case study. And I had to do it on my own. I had to figure out at the highest level of sports, where everything's heightened, how to get out of my own way when I didn't even know I was in my own way. I didn't know it. That was a brutal part, which is why I created this cycle that was just a repeated cycle. It was like Groundhog Day. Show up every day and the same anxieties, the same fears, the same, inefficiencies showed up every day because I did not know what I was doing to myself. And so you go through that. And then, what happens when you get full blown anxiety doing something that, all you want to do is be great at doing? Well, I had to figure that out. And then I overcame it. And then all these other odds, and then getting anxiety after football, where I was thinking hey, I never have to worry or stress again because I'm leaving the most stressful environment that you could be in. And all of a sudden, every day of your life, every second of the day, you feel like something catastrophic is going to happen. You're like, what's going on? And next thing you know, you identify that you have full-blown anxiety, and then identified why. And then most people are just going to feel a victim to it. You know what I mean? Once they understand I have anxiety, it's well, I'm a victim to it. Help me. I wasn't asking for somebody else to help me. I wanted to figure out how to help myself, right? I don't want a Band-Aid. I'm not against medication at all. So I'm not, anyone who needs to be on medication, do what you got to do. I'm saying I don't want to be held hostage by anything. It's why I don't drink coffee. You know what I mean? It's I don't want to be held, and I got nothing against people who drink coffee. I just want to be able to function on my own terms, because of me. And so I had to figure out, it's 8 months to figure out how to eliminate anxiety that was riddling my life every second of the day, to where I was dude, I don't even know if I could do this for the next 20 years. If I got to live like this, I don't know if I can do this for 20 years or 30 or however long I'm going to be on this planet. I'm not living. This is horrible. It was absolutely genuinely terrible. And so I had to go through that. And then, OCD, I have OCD and a germaphobe and all these things, you know what I mean? That they don't rule my life, but all those things popped up unequivocally at different points in my life for years. You know what I mean? And because I don't like to be held hostage by things, once I realized how much power I had when I went through what I went through with the Niners and getting this full-blown anxiety, then every time I was confronted with things that I felt were overtaking me, like OCD and being a germaphobe, I was no longer okay with it, right? And I realized how much power I had to change it, right? Because the greatest power we have is the power of choice. We don't use it, right? We never use our choice as power, right? We allow ourselves to become victims to whatever we're confronted with, right? But really, you have a choice that you can make to confront it and be bigger than it. But so why aren't you making it? You know what I mean? And so I've been through all that stuff, right? And so there's nothing someone can tell me is well, you don't understand. Well, yeah, I do. I've never been depressed, so I probably don't understand that, right? But I can probably identify where it comes from, and I get it. It's genetic, right? And there's always triggers, right? Some people are just prone to potentially have anxiety or depression or whatever, and I fully get that. But usually it's something in our environment that sets it off, right? And so if we were strong enough mentally, then we could have maybe confronted that in time, that it wouldn't have overtaken our lives. But there's nothing that says you can't start confronting it now, right? And so this is all just, everything you do, everything I do is about empowering people to take ownership of the way that they experience themselves, right? That they create the guidelines. They're no longer letting someone tell them how they're supposed to believe and what they're supposed to feel about who they are and what they do. Like once you take that power back, possibilities become realities. That's how you get levitated. You know what I mean? And that's what you want for people, right? That's exactly what you want. We're just using sports as a mechanism, right? It was always meant to be a mechanism for discovery. People always think, I hear these coaches and stuff and parents be like, yeah, you know, sports is such a great learning tool. It's not though. For so many athletes, it's not. It's like prison. It should be, but too many coaches aren't getting it. You know what I mean? They're the biggest problem. I would tell you honestly, probably 65 to 70% of the consultations that I have are because of a coach. I mean, that's the truth. Something they said, their ignorance, you know what I mean? Just talking down to you, trying to break you down. And if you don't have enough sense of self, it's going to happen. Like even when I was getting verbally like just assaulted by my coach in the NFL, he never hurt my feelings. It wasn't like he made me insecure, like, oh my gosh, like maybe I'm not as good as I think I am, or, you know, oh my gosh, maybe I'm not a worthy person. All it made me do was want to knock this guy out. You know what I mean? But in truth, what did happen was I started fearing what his vitriol, what his hatred could potentially mean as an outcome. It meant that what ended up being this dream of like, oh my gosh, I could be the next guy in line to be the next great wide receiver for this amazing team, into this guy could cut me tomorrow if I drop one too many balls. And I don't want to see this dream end. And now I'm so scared that it could. That's what gripped me. You know what I mean? That lack of acceptance. I had accepted I could get cut when I signed with them, and I just played. And because of that, I played phenomenal. But then all of a sudden I'm playing off the charts and I'm doing things I could have never envisioned on the best team in the NFL, where they're Hall of Fame quarterbacks. Like, this guy is a dude. And now you drop a ball in practice after this guy just mother effed you for the 38th time, right? And then he doesn't say anything. No one says a word, but in your head, you're like, oh my God, if I start dropping balls, this guy's going to cut me. He hates me. He's going to end my dream. Well, that's the one thought that sends you into the abyss. You know what I mean? And that's pretty much what happened. The lack of acceptance. Now I didn't want to lose something. And I didn't realize that at the time. It took me 3 weeks to figure that out. And then once I figured it out, I'm like, screw this freaking guy. You know what I mean? Like, I don't play for this dude. I didn't even know this dude existed 7 months ago when I was playing for the Chargers. Now I care about this guy thinks. Like why do I play? Well, I play for the 7 seconds. I line up against some DB who thinks he's an alpha dog who's going to stop me from getting what I want. He'll never stop me more than I can take what I want. That's why I play, and that's what I love. What does it have to do with that? Nothing. So pretty much what I did was I took my power back to insulate myself from whatever he thought about what I was doing and the consequence he could create. Once I accepted the consequence that this dude might cut me, I don't care anymore. I'm tired of being compromised. Once I accepted that, I went to a whole other dimension of performance. It was the craziest thing to experience. You know what I mean? And so like, it was that acceptance you talked about earlier, that acceptance I'm talking about now. You can't quantify the power of accepting things like that. That we always say, accept the things you can't control. Saying that is different than experiencing like what that is. And it's also different than understanding how to actually do it. That's why so many people can't move forward, right? Because everyone's telling you what to do. Just go be more confident. Like just go let it go. Don't go play scared. It's like, that sounds great in theory, but I have a belief system that only knows how to play scared, that only knows how to fear, that only knows how to be judgmental, that only knows how to worry about consequence. So you telling me that doesn't help me, because even though it sounds great in the car, you know, when I'm going to my game, once I step out on the field, then I'm going to revert back to what my belief system is. And all the fears that are associated with whatever PSD or PTSD has been created from previous experiences where I felt inadequate or scared that I wasn't big enough or I was letting people down. You know what I mean? So the whole thing is so fascinating, man, like what goes on in our head. But again, this is why the mental game is huge. You know, when you're talking to someone who was great at what he did, I was great at what I did. Always. I always got what I wanted as a kid growing up. I was a star. You know what I mean? Even in the NFL, before I went into the abyss, which took one day, by the way, it didn't happen over the course of a week. It was one day. I went into the absolute abyss. And the day before that, I was phenomenal. Like one of the best. I was playing next to one of the best receivers to ever play the game, if not the best ever, playing phenomenal. And it took one day for me to lose all of that. One day because of a negative thought. Right. And so this is what I mean. This is the power of the mind. Like I even went to a jugs machine to catch balls for 30 minutes after about 4 days of like dropping balls in practice. I'm like, I can't stop this and I got to figure something out quickly or else I'm getting cut. On the jugs machine, when I was catching balls for 30 minutes before practice, flawless, got everything, felt amazing. Go to practice, 15 minutes in, drop my first ball. And why? Because that was a controlled environment when I went to go catch balls on the jugs machine. Chris Thomas got to create the terms there. There was no coach there. There was no threat there. It was a harmless environment. There was no pressure there. I got to just do what I did. And if I dropped a ball, I wouldn't care because no one's watching, which is why I let myself catch the ball, because I wasn't worried about dropping a ball. But then you go to practice, you're not consciously thinking about the consequence, but the PTSD is there, right? This is the place where I fear losing something. So whether I'm consciously thinking about it or not, it's in my subconscious mind, right? And I haven't addressed it. So because I haven't addressed it, it's going to surface. Right. And that's what happened. And so 15 minutes later, you drop a ball. And that's where the anxiety came in. So yeah, the whole thing is fascinating, man. But it's why I'm very sensitive to coaching, by the way, too. Right. There's nothing worse than a bad coach, because I don't know why you're coaching if not to give and not to inspire and not to motivate and like help somebody find their greatness. And if you can't do that, it's okay. Just support them. But the worst thing you can do is not know what you're doing and then say something negative to people to break them down, because most of the time it's going to work.
Yeah, I think my answer to that is, number one, I want to acknowledge you on two levels. Acknowledge you for accepting truly what it means to accept the things that you can't control. Going through that process, it takes a lot of work. And whether it happened in days, weeks, months, years, whatever it is, with support from someone else, with a book, without a book, by yourself, however you did it, you did it. And that's really hard for any human to do. So acknowledge that. Number two, want to acknowledge the fact that you took that and went back and applied service to others after going through that process. I think when we look at, you say maybe 60 to 70% of coaches, I feel the same way, aren't supporting athletes in the way that they should. I think it's because they didn't go through that first process. They didn't, accept the things that either happened in their career or happened in their life, and they didn't confront that and they didn't get over that. And then even if they're a good person and they have the right intentions, those things that they never accepted or never confronted show up in their coaching in a bad light and then negatively affect the people that they're helping. And so you went through that tough process, confronted your reality, and made changes. And made really hard changes. And now, incredibly successful in financial services, drive whatever car you want to drive, buy whatever houses you want to buy, and do this and do that. And it's like really easy to explain that to people, what you do for a living and what you do. And then you said, no, like I'm cool with going to work with kids in the park, because that's truly what God put me on this earth to do, and help people. And that takes a lot of courage too, man. Like it takes a lot of courage. It takes a lot of courage to be able to do that. And you're a really, really courageous person that is truly living out what I believe God put you on this planet to do. And I feel the same way about what I'm doing. And I know, and it's really hard to identify with and finding those people in your life that are willing to do that. There's some people that have to coach to make a living because all they know is that sport, and they don't want to kind of challenge themselves in other arenas, and so they just stay in that arena because they know that arena and it's safe and it's comfortable. Both of us have had, even though I'm younger, but incredible opportunities to do things outside of our arena of sport, which we know, which we grew up in, but have comfortably declined those opportunities to go back and do what our greatest calling is. And that's where I align and identify with you. And I don't really know anyone else that I can identify with in that way. So that's the biggest thing. For today, we're out of time, but I want the people to know that linked in this podcast will be a complete resource to seek Chris's coaching through portals on his website, through coaching courses that he has provided that have changed kids' lives. I've gone through the courses. They're phenomenal. They unlock, they help you learn some of the things that he just glazed on and touched on today. They really go into depth and great detail on how to unlock and how to achieve these things. Chris has been nothing but special to me, my family, my brother, any athlete that I've ever sent his way. There's been nothing but success and gratitude from the guys that I've sent. So I'd love to send everyone his way because I know that he can truly help. I know that he can truly help, and he's helped me, and he continues to help so many. The next time he comes back on this podcast, we're going to talk about his son who just made his big league debut. You can see how humble Chris is. Never brought it up once. His son just achieved one of the hardest things to do in sports, which is make the big leagues. And then I want to talk about another athlete that we both worked with named Jacob Wilson. Jacob and Rylan both are very unique in the fact that they know the game within the game, and they're playing a different game. And that's why they're able to succeed at the highest level, because they're not playing other people's game. They're playing their game. And that's why they're winning. And so all these things being said, we'll get back at it and get another episode to you guys, but really appreciate you listening, and all the best. Thanks, ET.